I gave my father an ultimatum, either serve my wife or leave. He quietly stood up, said I understand, and walked out of the very house he had bought for me. The man I had just driven away was the one who had spent his entire $95,000 retirement savings to put me through college. The one who had worked overtime to give me $18,500 for my wedding. The one who had lived like a pauper on $150 a month so that I could live like a prince. And I, the cruel son, had just turned my benefactor into a homeless man with one heartless sentence. A week later, I came face to face with the horrifying truth. I thought I was teaching my father a lesson that Saturday evening. Instead, he taught me one I'll never forget. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The smell of pot roast filled our Cedar Falls home. As I pulled into the driveway, hands still stained with motor oil from the garage. Through the kitchen window, I could see Dad helping Natalie set the table, his silver hair catching the warm light. At 65, Theodore Brennan moved with the careful precision of a man who'd spent 30 years managing money at First National Bank. I should have appreciated that. "Hey, honey," Natalie called as I kicked off my work boots. "Your father's been fussing over dinner all afternoon." There was something in her tone, not quite irritation, but close. She'd been making comments like that lately, little digs about Dad's presence in our house. Our house. That's how I'd started thinking about it. Even though Dad's name was on the deed, Dad's money had bought it. Dad's retirement fund had made our life possible. Dinner started pleasantly. Dad asked about my day, listened patiently as I complained about difficult customers. He always listened. That was Theodore Brennan, present, engaged, caring about every detail of his son's life. "You know, Theodore," Natalie said, cutting her roast with deliberate precision, "I've been thinking you could help out more around here, since you're home all day." Dad paused fork halfway to his mouth. "Of course, dear. What did you have in mind?" "Well, the house doesn't clean itself. Maybe you could earn your keep a little more." Earn his keep in his own house, with his own money supporting us. I should have said something. Instead, I felt irritation. Why couldn't Dad just fit in better? After dinner, Dad cleared the dishes, something he'd done without being asked for 3 years. Natalie touched my arm, leaning close. "Your father needs to understand his place here, Garrett. We're building a life. He's just visiting in the house he'd bought us." I found him in the kitchen washing each dish carefully. "Dad, we need to talk." He looked up, those gentle brown eyes meeting mine. "What's on your mind, son?" "It's about contributing more, following house rules. Natalie and I are trying to build something here." "I understand. What would you like me to do?" His willingness should have melted my heart. Instead, it frustrated me. "Look, Dad, this is our house now. You live here because we let you. If you want to keep living here peacefully, you need to serve us properly, help out more, do what we ask when we ask it." Listening to this part, you must be thinking that I am the last child in the world, and you were right. Dad set down the dish towel movement, still careful. "I've given you both everything I had, Garrett. I thought that earned me some respect." "Respect is earned, not given, and lately, Dad, you haven't been earning it." The words came out harsh, but I didn't take them back. This was our house, our life. "So here's how it's going to work. Either you serve us properly, help out the way we need you to, or you need to find somewhere else to live. Your choice." Dad stood there for a long moment, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. Not anger, not hurt, something deeper. "I understand," he said quietly. Then he walked toward his bedroom, footsteps steady on the hardwood floors he'd helped me refinish 2 years ago. From down the hall, we heard drawers opening movement. I assumed he was just making a point. "Has anyone among you ever spoken such cruel words to your father? I hope not." Because what I didn't know was that my father had spent his banking career planning for every contingency, and his son's ultimatum was about to change everything. Sunday morning hit me like a slap of cold air. I woke to unusual silence, no coffee brewing, no news murmuring from the kitchen, no familiar sounds of Dad starting his day. I rolled over, glancing toward the driveway. Empty. Dad's old Buick was gone. "Natalie," I whispered, nudging her awake. "Dad's car isn't there." She groaned. He probably went for groceries, but something gnawed at me. Dad never left before 7, and he always mentioned his plans the night before. Always. I padded to the kitchen, hoping for a note about errands or an early church meeting. Instead, a single sheet of paper sat squarely in the middle of the table, written in Dad's careful banker's hand. "Son, I've taken you at your word. Good luck with your independence. Dad." The formality struck first. No love, Dad. No warmth. Just his signature like the closing of a business deal. "What's that?" Natalie asked, pulling her robe tighter. I handed her the note. She skimmed it, rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. He's throwing some old man tantrum. He'll be back by dinner." I wanted to believe her, but something in that note felt final, deliberate. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Brennan. This is Janet from Midwest Mortgage. Your payment due tomorrow. We tried the automatic withdrawal this morning. It was declined." My blood ran cold. Declined. "That's impossible. Sir, the account shows as closed. You'll need to make alternative arrangements immediately." I hung up, staring at Natalie. The mortgage payment bounced. "What do you mean bounced?" she asked sharply. Before I could answer, the phone rang again. The insurance company, then the credit card company, then the bank. Each call delivered the same blow. Dad had withdrawn systematically and completely from every financial tie. Joint accounts closed, automatic payments canceled. Credit cards where I was just an authorized user terminated. Natalie kept repeating, "This is insane. He can't just do this." But he could, and he had. By 10 o'clock, our kitchen table was covered with bills I had barely acknowledged before. Mortgage being 100, utilities 180s, car insurance 200. Groceries Dad's card had always covered 170 monthly. I pulled out a calculator, my hands trembling. My mechanic's salary, $200 a month. Our expenses without Dad, $2,050. "We can make it," I said though. My voice shook. "It'll be tight, but we can make it." Natalie glared. "Make it? I'm not living like broke college kids because your father decided to pull a stunt." That's when I understood this wasn't a stunt or tantrum. This was Dad executing a clean break, a carefully planned financial separation. Was it harsh? Absolutely. But it was calculated, not impulsive. I tried calling his cell, straight to voicemail. An hour later, the same. Panic built inside me. "He'll come back," Natalie insisted, though her voice had lost conviction. I stared again at that note, at the precise script. The man who had quietly rescued me from every financial mess was gone. Maybe you think I deserved these consequences. Honestly, you wouldn't be wrong. But I had no idea how much deeper it would go. Monday morning brought a reality I'd been avoiding for 3 years. Real bills. Bills with my name on them, instead of Dad's. The mailbox felt heavier, stuffed with envelopes I'd never paid attention to before. Electric bill, 180s, water and sewer, 95, internet and cable, 120, groceries that had been automatically charged to Dad's credit card, 170. I spread them across our kitchen table, like evidence in a crime scene. This is temporary," I told myself, pulling out my phone calculator. "We can handle this." My monthly take-home from the garage, $200. Our monthly expenses without Dad's safety net, $2,850. The math was simple. We had $350 left over each month. Tight but manageable. "See," I showed Natalie the numbers. "We don't need him. We're adults." She glanced at my calculations, then back at her coffee. $350, Garrett, that's nothing. What happens when the car breaks down, or we want to go out to dinner? Do you see how dependent I was on my father? At 32, I was still living like a child who'd never learned a budget. Tuesday brought reality checks. Card declined buying coffee. I'd forgotten the gym membership. $45 that suddenly mattered. Wednesday brought more. Natalie's hair appointment, $85. Her monthly massage, $60. Premium cable I'd never noticed because Dad covered the family plan. "We need to cut back," I said the evening, surrounded by receipts. "Cancel some extras." Natalie looked at me like I'd suggested living in a cardboard box. "Cut back, Garrett. I'm not living like some broke college student because your father decided to have a breakdown." It's not a breakdown, it's reality. Without Dad's help, this is what we can afford. Then get him back. The simplicity frustrated me. Get him back. Like Dad was a lost dog who'd return if I shook a treat bag. Thursday brought late payment warnings. The credit card I thought had zero balance, it carried $2,300 in charges I'd made over 6 months. Charges Dad had been quietly paying off. My coworkers started asking questions. "Where's your old man been?" Mike asked during lunch. "Haven't seen him around the shop." Dad used to stop by, bringing lunch or checking in. I'd been embarrassed then, thinking it made me look like a mama's boy. Now I realized the whole town had seen something I'd been blind to, a father who cared enough to stay involved. "He's taking some time for himself," I mumbled. Friday's mail brought the final blow: homeowners insurance canceled. Policy terminated Sunday morning when Theodore Brennan removed all beneficiaries. That's when it hit me. We hadn't been living 350 over our means. We'd been living 350s over my means while Dad covered everything else. The insurance, credit card payments, little emergencies that pop up in adult life. When I told Natalie about the insurance, she threw her coffee mug across the kitchen. This is insane. He can't just abandon us. But he hadn't abandoned us. He'd stopped enabling us. There's a difference, though. It took me much longer to understand it. Looking at those bills scattered across our table, I realized something that should have been obvious. I'd been living like a rich man on a poor man's salary. And the only reason it worked was because my father had been quietly filling every gap. Maybe you're thinking what a naive fool I was. How does a 32-year-old man not know where his money comes from? The answer is simple: because someone loved me enough to make sure I never had to learn. But that education was about to begin, whether I wanted it or not. By the second week, I realized our family drama hadn't happened in a vacuum. Cedar Falls was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone's business, and Theodore Brennan's sudden disappearance hadn't gone unnoticed. Margaret Sullivan caught me Monday morning as I loaded my toolbox. "Garrett, honey," she called from her porch. "I haven't seen your father around lately. Everything all right?" The question hit harder than it should have. "He's taking some time to himself." She nodded, but something in her eyes suggested she knew more. Tuesday brought more questions. Jim Peterson mentioned seeing Dad's Buick at the Riverside Apartments downtown. Looked like he was carrying boxes. Hope he's not having health problems. Health problems. If only it were that simple. Wednesday. Margaret appeared at my door with a casserole and concerned expression. "Garrett, I need to tell you something. We've all known for years how much your father does for you. The whole neighborhood knows." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Honey, your father paid for your wedding. We all saw the checks. And your college, Iowa State, doesn't pay for itself. Plus this house. We know Theodore made the down payment. Can you imagine discovering that your private family business was actually neighborhood common knowledge? That everyone had been watching your father's generosity for years? Son, your father is the most generous man in this town. We've all been wondering when you'd start appreciating what you have." The words stung because they were true. While I'd been taking Dad's support for granted, the entire community had been witnessing his sacrifices. Thursday brought the grocery store encounter I'd been dreading. 3 different people asked about Dad. The pharmacist mentioned he'd picked up prescriptions and changed his address. The bank teller gave me a look that could have frozen fire. "Your father's a good man, Garrett. I hope you know that." By Friday, even my coworkers were asking questions. Dad had been the shop's regular visitor for 20 years, bringing me lunch, chatting with the guys. "Where's Theodore been?" asked Mike the foreman. "Man always brightened up the place." Past tense, like Dad was already gone for good. Saturday night, Natalie exploded. "I can't go anywhere without people staring at us like we're criminals. Mrs. Patterson asked me point blank if we'd had a falling out with your father. This is humiliating. Everyone's looking at us like we did something wrong," she continued. "Maybe we did," I said quietly. The words surprised us both. Sunday morning at Cedar Falls, Methodist felt like walking into a courtroom. The whispers stopped when we entered, but the looks didn't. Pastor Matthews nodded politely, but even his smile seemed strained. During service, I caught sight of familiar faces. People who'd watched me grow up, who'd seen Dad at every school event. Their expressions ranged from disappointment to outright disapproval. Can you imagine sitting in a church pew feeling like the entire congregation knows you've failed as a son? After service, Margaret approached us one final time. "Garrett, whatever happened between you and your father, you need to fix it. That man gave you everything and everyone in this town knows it." Walking to our car, I felt the weight of an entire community's judgment. These weren't strangers criticizing from afar. These were people who'd watched Theodore Brennan quietly sacrifice for his ungrateful son for years. And now they were watching to see what kind of man I really was. The answer to that question was about to become painfully clear. Week 3 brought the first real consequences of our new financial reality. A thick envelope from Midwest Mortgage Services arrived Monday morning, marked urgent in red letters. Late payment notice, 30 days past due, $150 penalty fee added to our account. I stared at the notice, my coffee growing cold. This wasn't a billing error or a computer glitch. This was what happened when you couldn't pay your bills on time. "What's that?" Natalie asked, glancing over my shoulder. "Late fee. We missed the mortgage payment." Her face flushed. "This is ridiculous, Garrett. Call your father right now and fix this." It fixed what we're the ones who told him to leave. And that was before we knew he'd go completely insane and cut us off financially. Tuesday's argument was our worst yet. Natalie paced our kitchen like a caged animal, her voice rising with each lap. "You let him walk out of here like some martyr," she accused. "Now look where we are. Late fees insurance canceled the whole town talking about us like we're deadbeats. We told him to serve us or leave. He chose to leave. Because you didn't handle it right. You should have been firmer, made him understand his place without letting him throw this tantrum. Do you see what my wife was really concerned about? Not that we'd hurt my father's feelings, but that we'd lost our financial safety net." Wednesday, she shifted tactics. "You need to call him," she said, her voice suddenly gentle. "Apologize. Tell him you were having a bad day. Whatever it takes to get him back here." "Natalie, I can't just—" "Yes, you can. He's your father. He loves you. Use that." The coldness in her voice chilled me. Use that. Like Dad's love was a tool to manipulate rather than a gift to treasure. Thursday evening, I finally worked up the courage to call Dad's cell phone. It rang 4 times before he answered. "Hello, Garrett." His voice was calm, measured. Not angry, not hurt. Just distant. "Dad, we need to talk." "About what, son?" "About you coming home. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. The bills, the neighbors asking questions." A long pause. I could hear classical music playing in the background, something peaceful and sad. "Garrett, I raised you better than this. You're 32 years old. Figure out what kind of man you want to be." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you made your choice that Saturday night. You told me to serve you or leave your house. I left. Now you need to learn to live with the consequences of your decisions." His voice was so calm, it was almost worse than if he'd been yelling. This wasn't anger. This was disappointment. Deep, profound disappointment in the man his son had become. "Dad, please, can't we just—" "Son, I love you. I will always love you. But I won't enable you anymore. When you're ready to have an adult conversation about respect and responsibility, call me. Until then, you have everything you said you wanted. Independence." The line went dead. When I told Natalie about the conversation, she threw her wine glass against the kitchen wall. "And that's it? That's all you said? You didn't fight for us? Didn't make him understand what he's doing to our marriage?" "Yes, our marriage." "Yes, our marriage. If you don't get him back here, Garrett, I'm done. I'm not living like some welfare case because your father decided to punish us." I stared at her, really seeing her for the first time in years. Maybe I married the wrong person. The words hung between us like a challenge. Sunday was silent warfare. We moved around each other like strangers, each waiting for the other to break first. But I kept hearing Dad's voice. "Figure out what kind of man you want to be." Monday morning's mail brought a reality check that hit like a punch to the gut. The envelope was thicker this time, more official, with "Final Notice" stamped in bold red letters. 30 days past due, $150 late fee, total amount owed $1,250. But the next paragraph made my hands shake. Failure to bring account current within 30 days will result in foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure. The word felt foreign, like something that happened to other people. People who were irresponsible. People like me. Tuesday, I sat across from Jennifer Walsh at First National Bank, the same institution where Dad had worked for 3 decades. She knew our family history, which made this meeting even more humiliating. "Mr. Brennan, you're looking at a 60-day foreclosure timeline if we don't receive payment," she explained. "Is there any way to bring the account current? I need to apply for a loan, something to cover the gap." She pulled up my credit report, her expression growing more concerned. "Garrett, without your father's co-signature, your debt-to-income ratio doesn't qualify you for the amount you'd need. You're already carrying $2,300 in credit card debt." Sitting in that bank office, I felt like a fraud, like a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. Have you ever felt completely powerless about your own financial situation? Like you were watching your life fall apart and couldn't do anything to stop it? Wednesday brought more rejections. 3 different lenders, same answer: insufficient income, too much existing debt, no qualified co-signer available. Thursday's mail delivered another blow: car insurance had lapsed. Dad had been covering both vehicles under his policy. The monthly premium for 2 vehicles, $200. Money we didn't have for coverage we couldn't live without. Friday revealed the full scope of our credit card situation. Natalie's cards were maxed out at $3,100. The minimum payments alone would cost us $180 monthly. "When did you spend $3,100? I asked her. "It's been building up. groceries when we were short gas that weekend in Des Moines. That weekend had felt like celebrating our independence. Now it looked like financial suicide. Saturday, I picked up extra hours at the garage, working 14 hours straight. The additional labor earned me $210 before taxes. Even working myself to exhaustion, I was still $350 short each month. Sunday evening, I sat at our kitchen table with a calculator and bills trying to perform financial magic that didn't exist. Mortgage payment plus late fee, $1, $250 a credit card. Minimums $180, car insurance, $200 utilities, $275 groceries, $170. Total needed immediately $2,075 money, available $350. The math was brutally simple. I needed $1,800 I didn't have, couldn't borrow, and couldn't earn fast enough. For 32 years, someone had been making these numbers work. Someone had been quietly filling the gaps, covering the shortfalls, making sure the math added up, so I never had to worry about it. Have you ever realized that everything you thought you'd accomplished was actually someone else's achievement? That your entire adult life was built on a foundation you didn't even know existed? Dad had made it look effortless. Wake up, go to work, pay the bills, support the family. I'd assumed it was simple because he made it look simple. Now I understood it wasn't simple. It was sacrifice. Daily, constant, invisible sacrifice. And I'd repaid that sacrifice by telling him to serve me or leave. The calculator displayed a number that might as well have been $1,800,000. $1,800 between keeping our home and losing everything. But discovering that gap was nothing compared to what I was about to learn. Monday afternoon, desperate for answers to our financial crisis, I searched through Dad's old home office. In the bottom drawer of his desk, I discovered a manila folder labeled in his neat handwriting, Garrett, Financial History. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first document struck me like a physical blow, Iowa State University tuition receipts. Page after page, 4 years of payments, carefully filed away each semester, nearly $24,000. By the time the final statement appeared, the total stood at $95,000. I had always known Dad paid for my education, but seeing his savings drain from $127,000 down to $32,000 made me sick to my stomach. $95,000 of his sacrifice so I could have a degree. On Tuesday, I uncovered the wedding records. Every detail was documented: reception hall, catering, flowers, the photography package, even Natalie's dress. $18,500 in all. That spring, I remembered him working weekends consulting on projects he never mentioned. Now I knew why. While I stressed about guest lists and decorations, he was quietly paying for it all. Wednesday revealed the papers for our house. There it was, a check for $45,000 withdrawn from his retirement account. 30 years of savings poured into my down payment so I could have a home of my own. Thursday brought the monthly records. Transfers listed with precision: $1,100 for the mortgage, $200 for insurance, $180 for utilities, $170 for groceries. Month after month for 36 consecutive months, he sent money to cover our bills. By the end, his quiet contributions had added up to $59,400. But Friday's discovery undid me completely. His Social Security statements showed he brought in only $1,800 a month. Out of that, he had been giving me $1,650. My father had survived on $150 a month so that I could live comfortably, never once complaining. On Saturday, I found his personal ledger. Groceries $40, gas $35. Everything else, clothes, medical co-pays, any small comfort squeezed into what remained. While I ate steak and grumbled about our grocery budget, Dad was buying generic cereal and day-old bread. By Sunday evening, I sat surrounded by the evidence of his sacrifices and did the final math. $95,000 for college, $18,500 for the wedding, $45,000 for the house, nearly $60,000 in monthly support. Altogether, $217,900, more than many people earn in 4 years of full-time work. And how had I repaid him by telling him he wasn't earning his keep? Do you see now why I felt like a criminal? Everything I had, my education, my marriage, my home, was built on his sacrifices. The man I accused of not contributing had been giving me everything, asking for nothing but respect. And that respect I had refused to give. Sitting in that office staring at 7 years of proof of unconditional love, I finally understood what I had thrown away. And I had no idea if it was already too late to get it back. Monday morning, I sat outside Cedar Falls Methodist Church for 20 minutes before finding courage to call. Pastor Daniel Matthews had baptized me, confirmed me, and officiated my wedding. If anyone could help me face this, it was him. Pastor Matthews, this is Garrett Brennan. I need to talk about my father, about what I've done. His voice was gentle. Of course, son. Can you come this afternoon? Tuesday, I sat in his small office surrounded by books and family photos, trying to explain the inexplicable. I spread the financial papers across his desk, like evidence in a trial where I was both prosecutor and defendant. $217,000, I whispered. Over 7 years, he gave me that much, and I told him he wasn't earning his keep. Pastor Matthews studied the pages. When he looked up, his eyes held no judgment, only sorrow. Confessing to a man of God, I felt I was finally telling the truth. Do you believe in forgiveness? Because I desperately needed to. Garrett, what you feel, guilt shame, is appropriate. But it's not the end of the story. How do I fix this? How do I repay him? Forgiveness isn't demanded. It's earned through change. The question isn't whether your father forgives you, but whether you'll become the man who deserves it. Wednesday, our talk cut deeper. We discussed accountability, how private apologies differ from public acknowledgement. Your father's reputation is sterling, Pastor Matthews said. Everyone knows his character, but they also watched you take him for granted. If you want real forgiveness, you must set the record straight publicly. You mean admit what I did. I mean honor what he did and confess your failure to value it. The thought terrified me. Could I stand before people who'd watch me grow up and confess my selfishness? Did I have the courage for that honesty? Thursday we discussed confession in practice testimony. On Sunday, no vague words. $200,000 over 7 years, he said. How do you begin to make that right? I don't know. You start with the truth, all of it, in front of those who need to hear. Friday, I drove past Dad's apartment 3 times before parking. Through the window, I saw warm light. He was likely reading or listening to classical music. I longed to run up the stairs and beg him to come home. But I knew I wasn't ready. I hadn't earned the right. Seeing him from a distance, wanting to embrace him, but knowing I didn't deserve to. Can you understand that longing mixed with shame? Saturday, I began writing my confession. Every word felt inadequate. How do you summarize 7 years of taking someone's love for granted? How do you admit publicly you were the worst kind of son? Sunday evening, I had 3 pages of notes rewritten a dozen times. The message was simple. I had been wrong, Dad had been generous beyond measure, and the community deserved the truth. Simple, though not easy. Standing before everyone I'd ever known, admitting my failures, this would be the hardest thing I'd ever done. The question was, did I love my father enough to do it? Monday brought the final nail in my marriage's coffin. I came home to find Natalie's suitcases by the door and divorce papers on the kitchen table. I filed for separation this morning, she announced. I'm moving back to Mom's until this gets sorted out. Oh, Natalie, we can work through what Garrett, you chose your father over me. You chose some fantasy reconciliation over our actual marriage. She was right. I had chosen. Every decision since finding those financial documents had been leading away from her and toward redemption with Dad. When Natalie left, taking half our furniture and most of my illusions about love, did you feel sorry for me? Or did you think I was getting exactly what I deserved? Tuesday's mail brought the foreclosure notice, 60 days to vacate. The house Dad had made possible would soon belong to the bank, and somehow that felt appropriate. I'd never really earned it anyway. Wednesday afternoon, driving around town, I spotted Dad's Buick outside Miller's coffee shop. Through the window, I could see him reading a newspaper, coffee steaming beside him. He looked peaceful, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen him in years. The contrast hit me hard. There I was, falling apart, losing everything. And there was Dad, calm and content, finally free from the burden of supporting his ungrateful son. Seeing my father look so at peace, do you understand why he had to leave me? Why staying would have slowly destroyed him? Thursday evening, I practiced my confession speech in the empty house. Every time I reached the part about the money, $217,000, my voice cracked. How do you say numbers like that without choking on shame? Friday, I drove to Riverside Cemetery and sat beside Mom's grave for 2 hours. The headstone read, Margaret Ann Brennan, beloved wife and mother. Mom, I messed up so bad, I whispered to the granite marker. I became everything you and Dad tried to teach me not to be. Help me find the courage to make it right. Standing before my mother's grave, asking forgiveness from someone I'd never see again. Do you think the dead can still help us find strength? Saturday night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house that would soon be taken away, looking at the life I'd built on someone else's foundation. Every piece of furniture, every comfort, all purchased with my father's sacrifices. Sunday morning arrived gray and cold. I sat in my car outside the church for 15 minutes, watching people arrive for service. Familiar faces, people who'd known me since childhood. People who'd soon hear me confess to being the worst kind of son. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel. In my jacket pocket, 3 pages of handwritten notes outlined everything I needed to say. Every dollar Dad had spent, every sacrifice he'd made, every moment I'd failed to appreciate what I had. Could I really stand up and admit how badly I'd failed? Could I find the courage to tell the truth about my father's generosity and my own ingratitude? Looking at that church, I thought about Pastor Matthew's choice: become the man who deserves forgiveness, or stay the man who doesn't. I could lose everything else: my marriage, my house, my pride, my reputation. But I couldn't lose my father forever. Taking a deep breath, I opened the car door and walked toward the church steps. It was time to tell the truth. The sanctuary felt different that Sunday morning, fuller, more expectant. I slipped into a pew near the back, my heart hammering as Pastor Matthews began the service. I kept scanning for Dad's silver hair, but he was nowhere to be seen. Part of me felt relieved, part devastated. Then, at exactly 10 o'clock, the back door opened quietly. Theodore Brennan stepped inside, wearing his best navy suit. He moved with that careful dignity I remembered, nodding politely to people who turned. He found a seat in the very last row directly in my line of sight. When I saw my father walk into that church, my heart stopped beating. Can you feel the weight of that moment? The terror and hope crashing together. Our eyes met across the sanctuary. His expression was unreadable. Not angry, not welcoming, just present, waiting. When Pastor Matthews called for testimony time, my legs moved without conscious thought. I need to share something with all of you, I said, walking to the front. About my father, about the kind of man he is and the kind of son I've been. The sanctuary fell completely silent. Standing before my entire community, knowing my father was watching, I wondered if anyone would ever trust me again. And 7 years ago, when I graduated college, I thought I'd accomplished something remarkable. What I didn't know was that my father had spent $95,000 of his retirement savings to make that education possible. Murmurs rippled through the congregation. These were specific numbers, documented sacrifices. When I got married, we had the wedding of our dreams, $18,500 for one perfect day. My father worked overtime, took consulting jobs, gave up his own comforts so his son could have a fairy tale wedding. The murmurs grew louder. People were understanding the scope of generosity they had witnessed. The house where I lived was made possible by a $45,000 down payment from my father's life savings. And for 3 years, he's been giving us $1,650 every month. $1,650 out of his $1,800 Social Security check. When I spoke those numbers aloud, the shame was overwhelming. Can you forgive someone who took so much while giving so little in return? Total over 7 years, $217,900. My father sacrificed more than $200,000 for my happiness, and I repaid that generosity by telling him he wasn't earning his keep. The sanctuary was dead silent. 3 weeks ago, I gave the most generous man I've ever known an ultimatum: serve my wife and me properly or find somewhere else to live. He chose to leave rather than surrender his dignity. And I looked directly at Dad in that back pew. Looking into my father's eyes at that moment, do you think there was still love there, or had I finally killed it? Dad, I'm sorry. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for the chance to earn it. I want everyone here to know Theodore Brennan is the best man in this room, and I forgot that. I forgot that some people love you enough to give you everything and ask for nothing but respect in return. The congregation erupted in supportive murmurs and gentle applause, but I only cared about one person's reaction. Dad sat quietly for a long moment, then gave me the smallest nod. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement that I'd finally told the truth. It was more than I deserved, and exactly what I needed to begin earning my way back to being his son. After the service ended, I stood in the church parking lot, unsure what to do next. People came with handshakes, hugs, words of support, but my eyes stayed on Dad as he slowly made his way out. Then he walked over. "That took courage, son," he said quietly. "It's a start." Hearing those words that took courage, a spark of hope lit inside me. For the first time in weeks, I believed this might not be the end of our story. The next week, I moved into a small one-bedroom across town, just a mattress on the floor and a folding chair, but it was the first place I could afford on my own. A month later, the divorce was final, and the house went into foreclosure. Natalie remarried within 6 months. I felt no bitterness, only relief. For the first time in my adult life, I was free. Do you understand that feeling? Losing everything you thought mattered only to find what truly does. 2 months after my confession, I saw Dad at Miller's coffee shop. He nodded when our eyes met, but didn't approach. Progress, though slow. 3 months later, I began volunteering at church, helping at the food pantry cleaning, doing whatever Pastor Matthews asked. It wasn't about earning points. It was about becoming someone who gave instead of always taking. Every day I tried to prove I'd changed. Do you believe people can truly transform? I needed that to be true. 4 months later, Mrs. Sullivan told me Dad had mentioned my volunteer work. He seemed proud, she said. Proud. Such a simple word, but it meant everything. 6 months later, I saw him at the hardware store loading mulch. Without thinking, I offered need help with that. He looked surprised, then nodded. We worked in silence like when I was younger. How are you doing, son? He asked. Better, different, learning to live within my means, learning to appreciate instead of wanting more. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen in months. You're becoming the man I always knew you could be. Those words hit harder than any rebuke. He still believed in me, even after everything. Dad, I know I have a long way to go to earn your trust back. Trust is rebuilt one day at a time, Garrett. You're doing the work. That's what matters. We finished loading mulch, and he drove off with a wave. Not an invitation to dinner, not full forgiveness, but something better, recognition that I was trying. In that moment, I understood redemption isn't a single event. It's a process, showing up, making better choices, proving through action that you've changed. Do you believe love can survive betrayal? That family bonds can heal even when broken? I do. I've seen it. Not quickly, not easily, but gradually, like a bone that grows back stronger. If you still have parents, cherish them. Don't make my mistake of taking love for granted. And if you've already failed, know this: it's never too late to start becoming the person they raised you to be. The road is long, but real love is patient enough to wait. Looking back on this betrayal story, I've learned that love without boundaries isn't love. It's enabling. My father's generosity became my weakness because I never learned to appreciate sacrifice. This family drama story taught me that respect isn't inherited. It's earned through gratitude and reciprocated love. To those listening, don't be like me. Don't mistake your parents' sacrifices for obligations they owe you. Every dollar they spend on your dreams, every sleepless night they worry about your future, every compromise they make for your happiness. These aren't debts they must pay. They're gifts freely given that deserve recognition and respect. God blessed me with a father who loved unconditionally, but I nearly destroyed that blessing through entitlement. When God allows consequences to teach us lessons, we must listen. Through God's grace, I found the courage to confess my failures and begin earning redemption. Parents, don't enable your children's ingratitude like my father inadvertently did. Love them enough to let them struggle to face consequences, to learn appreciation through experience rather than assumption. This betrayal story isn't just mine. It happens in families everywhere. Children take parents' give, and somewhere along the way, gratitude gets lost. But family drama stories like this can have hopeful endings when we choose humility over pride. My father taught me that real love sometimes means walking away until someone learns to value what they have. The greatest gift he ever gave me wasn't money. It was teaching me to become a man worthy of his love. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about family forgiveness and second chances. And tell us in the comments, what's the greatest sacrifice someone made for you that you're grateful for today?